Well, it's not a rivalry, or it's at least not a rivalry until the Browns can be a contender and until the Browns can beat the Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger as the quarterback, because, well, that still has not happened that often, to say the least, and certainly did not happen today as the Pittsburgh Steelers dominate the Cleveland Browns. That's right, dominate the Cleveland Browns. I didn't think this game was in doubt, but I certainly didn't predict it to be like this. The Browns so far contender this season, but we'll see whether that's fool's gold, maybe exposed a little bit today. And we'll also see whether this game shows the Steelers are truly for real or not, or maybe the Browns aren't able to prove too much to you in terms of beating them. The Steelers, as I said, dominate the Cleveland Browns. That's right, dominate the Browns 38-7. Pittsburgh now moving to 5-0 on the season. In Big Ben's, I guess, kind of comeback tour revenge season. And so far, it's going pretty well. I'm your host here, Mike Asti, on the Steelers edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Alan back at the stadium after I was on location last week. And with Matt out, I'm going to be aboard most of this solo, but I do briefly have a guest here, as we're also going to incorporate chatters if you want to chat along too. Michael Santiago, who currently is a photographer with Getty Images, and you also will see him traveling right now, has the Steelers hat, but traveling back to Brooklyn, where his helm there for his work with Getty Images from Pittsburgh, where he still has ties. You also may know him from an established outlet here in Pittsburgh as well. So first off, Michael, I definitely appreciate you for the time. I appreciate your girlfriend for taking the wheel to allow this to happen there. I do like the hat, and we're doing this on an easy day. I mean, it's certainly a positive day for Steeler fans. Not too much to dive in because the Steelers kind of dominated all the way through, but I appreciate the time, and I do want to kind of ask you just off the top, for you, is this game more about the Steelers truly being a legit contender? Does it say more about the Steelers, or does it say more about maybe the Browns not being ready yet?
First of all, thanks for having me on. I mean, it's an honor to be on here talking. You know, I'm not a sports analyst or anything like that, so I'm just a fan. So I'm like, but I think, to be honest with you, I think it says more about the Steelers because I think one of the issues that the Steelers have had the last 10 years or so is that not being able to close out or win games that they should win. Right. And they today they did what they needed to do. I had no idea that the Browns were 4-1. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, okay.
Yeah.
This might be a game. And then as soon as Mika caught that interception and scored a touchdown, I was like, it's gonna be business as usual. So, I think it says more about the Steelers and finishing off a game that they needed to finish off in the way that they need to finish off.
Yeah, the Browns season kind of is surprising because they started off with a loss, thinking it's okay, it's same old Browns, they're not going to do it again. They managed to string off 4 in a row here prior to this game. And I thought the Steelers would win, but I certainly didn't think it would be like this. The games last year obviously were close. The Browns able to take one in that just asinine game that it was the circus against Mason Rudolph, which I'm happy really was not a thing today. Not only was Mason Rudolph not playing, but Myles Garrett was not a factor, positive or negative, in this game. So we're actually able to talk football after this. The post-game show last year was a little bit of a different turn, as you could imagine. And then the Steelers able to beat them that second game last year with even the duck caller as the quarterback. But now the Steelers really able to run up and down the field in this game. And then it certainly included those turnovers, as you mentioned, Minka really getting involved, and Baker Mayfield just making mistake after mistake. So it could be that the Browns aren't ready. I also will say the Steelers, and Steelers fans aren't going to want to hear this. I'm sure you're not going to want to hear this. The Steelers maybe still haven't played a quality team yet, especially if we're going to be down on the Browns. You're looking at the schedule. Denver's not ready. The Philadelphia Eagles are banged up. They're in the NFC East, but they're not that great this year. This isn't like a few years ago. This has been a schedule that has not been as tough as it sometimes is to open up years. So we still needed to see what the Steelers can do here. But if you're talking about the Steelers really showing how good they are in this game, from what you've seen from the Steelers and watching the Steelers for years and knowing that they have laid eggs in the past, they haven't laid that egg yet this year. They have been back healthy. Connor's over 100 again, even though there's kind of been doubt whether he's a featured guy. Claypool's doing it big. Another 70-plus yarder game for him. The defense just a beast again and really creating the pass rush and having tons of sacks again today. Is this Steelers team for you a legit Super Bowl contender? Are you having that in your mind right now that, hey, this is going to be a long haul and I need to have my weekend open in early February?
Nah, I'm honestly excited. And the reason being is that you said it all. They're clicking on offense and they're clicking on defense,
Right.
The past 10 years, they're either been dominant on defense and dominant on offense, never the two. And this year it seems like that both the defense and the offense are, they're clicking on all cylinders. One of the reasons why, the Steelers have been able to win the last 5 games is because they're putting up points and they're scoring when they need to, and it's scoring when they need to score. And so I think that's one of the biggest difference. I mean, they do, they need to do, I think they need to score more in the first possessions. But I think, these next 3 games are going to be a factor because they are 3 away games. So, I think this is when the test is going to happen. And I think starting with Tennessee and seeing how they handle Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry, a big run in his game today. And as long as everything goes clear with Tennessee actually able to play football, because that's been a question. They took away my bye week, so I won't be bitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tennessee coming up, the Ravens at Dallas.
Yeah.
All 3 of those on the road is certainly going to be a tough schedule here coming up. And then it could potentially get easier with the Bengals, etc. But I will say the Steelers looking solid in this game, and it is the Browns. We'll see what happens here the rest of the season. I'm not going to keep you too much longer there. I see that you're traveling, so I am going to let you go. Just want to say first off, I appreciate the time here, and anyone else there in the chat, feel free to chat along. I'll get to you after we let Michael continue his trek here. Just kind of. As maybe a last thing here from you as a Steeler fan, this is a deeper team. This is a little bit of a younger team with all these weapons around Big Ben, certainly Chase Claypool. Just thoughts on Chase Claypool, I guess, or any individually on this team. I mean, Chase Claypool, 6 touchdowns this year, tying Randy Moss among a few others for most touchdowns through those first 5 games for a rookie. I thought it was a solid pick, but I think expectations are even higher than anyone would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly used to, the Steelers always going defense in that, the first pick. So,
Right.
And I'm a defense guy, so I always loved that. So, I mean, once I saw Chase, I mean, he was a stud in Notre Dame. So, and he's just he's continuing that path. And the Steelers have never had a rookie score this many touchdowns ever. So I'm excited, and I think his emergence is gonna let JuJu go back to being where he's more comfortable at. That's being like a number 2 receiver. So I see super great potential coming from that wide receiver core, and hopefully James Conner keeps running at it seems like he's running with a chip on his shoulder and he's running angry, and I hope that he keeps going that way.
And that was said actually on the broadcast that it appears that he's kind of running angry. Certainly has dealt with tons of critics, myself included, that maybe he's not a featured guy, but the numbers are there when healthy. So we'll see how long that goes. Michael Santiago, again, a photographer there with Getty Images and formerly of an outlet here in Pittsburgh. Resident Steeler fan, definitely appreciate the time here, man. And I will let you continue your trek back up to New York, and glad to have you here in Pittsburgh for the weekend. And yeah, I think I'm with you in terms of this Steelers team, and I would keep it real either way. That the sky could definitely be the limit. So I would keep early February, as long as the schedule holds true, open.
All right, thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. All right, Mike.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Again, Michael Santiago, thanks to him there, a photographer there with Getty Images. I knew he was a Steeler fan. He was talking to me about, wanting to appear. So I definitely wanted to, get him on here for this post-game show, especially with the open slot with Matt, who's been doing these mostly with me, not available today. And of course, Alan from Stadium. I was there last week. But I will now go back to the chat. So now I'm going to definitely address the chatters there. I do see a lot of you guys. Again, Mike Asti here on the Steelers post-game show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Pittsburgh post-game, of course, here on PSL and SteelersNow.com. You can find us on social media at PGH Sports Live, at PGH Steelers Now. The show will, of course, be there, as well as PGHSportsLive.com, and myself at Mike Asti 11 over there on Twitter. The Texans are going to OT with the Titans. Steelers destroyed the Texans. Yeah, there's an argument to be made. And I think I got to say with Michael, though, the Titans were a playoff team last year. They've been playing well to this point, despite the hiccup there with COVID. That is a divisional game. So there's talent with the Texans. Deshaun Watson's obviously a great player, despite losing weapons from last season. I wouldn't read too much into that to say that the Titans aren't going to be a quality team they face. The Titans have played well this year. If the Steelers trounce the Titans like they did the Browns today, then, hey, that's finally going to be a quality win. We can stop tweeting about the Steelers' easy schedule, even though maybe not a team that necessarily is as much of a Super Bowl threat. And David Gormley there, thanks for the update there as I'm hosting the show. The Titans get the win. So they crawl out of there with the win. But still, the point remains they did not perform today, despite the run by Derrick Henry, against a team the Steelers did handle. So, again, it could be a mix. That will finally be a quality team the Steelers will play. Maybe the Browns are not. Maybe the Browns are fool's gold. Or it could be the Browns are better than last year. The Browns are finally maybe waking up. The Titans were a playoff team last year. They've been playing decent now with Jadeveon Clowney adding something for them. And maybe the Steelers are just better than those two teams and better than most teams, maybe with the exception of the Ravens and Chiefs, and are a legit Super Bowl contender. So it could be a mixed bag of any of that there. Comment on the Bush injury. Yeah, so that's going to be a thing here, of course. Devin Bush is a major cog in the Steelers' wheel. And I said this back when he was drafted, that he's going to be a part of the Steelers' future, could be a future face of this franchise, had that middle linebacker mold of being so smart, the brains. And I don't want to have anyone freak out in terms of me comparing him to this guy. He's obviously not a Hall of Famer by any means yet, despite playing well this early in his career. But it was that Ray Lewis mind that I saw in rookie minicamp last year upon immediately being drafted. And of course, they traded up to get him, but that crap certainly has worked out. That's going to be a ding. They're a great defense. There's tons of talent there, but there's not depth at his position throughout the linebacker core. So that will be a problem if he is out for a significant period of time. I don't think it means the Steelers are going to miss the playoffs or have the year ruined by any means, but they need Devin Bush. He's a piece of this team. Of course, TJ Watt, of course, Minka, of course, the rest of the defense, secondary all the way down to the defensive line. And Vince Williams, Cam Hayward, it can go on and on. Joe Hayden had a solid day against his former team. But Devin Bush is a big deal. So it didn't look good, though. And I don't know. Again, we'll have that over there, Steelers Now. Alan is certainly covering that now, doing the Zooms now as I'm hosting the show. But I will say, Devin, it didn't look good. I mean, when you're punching the field and you're getting dirt to have come up there from the field in clear frustration, it certainly appeared like that was something that he knew was bad. And players know whether their injury is going to keep him out or not. And his expression came off like it was going to keep him out. And I will also say, while the news didn't immediately break, it was soon. Normally we have to wait a while in the press box to make the announcement. It was soon after that injury that it was pretty clear that he was going to be out for the rest of that game. I don't know if that was because they thought the game was in hand or the injury was so severe. I don't exactly know the diagnosis as I'm hosting this show here. Again, we'll get that over there for you at SteelersNow.com. But I wouldn't be surprised if he misses next week. I wouldn't be surprised if he's held out of practice for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even longer than that. Would not be surprised if it's serious with the way he reacted and how quick it was that he was out. Clearly, he needed preserved, if nothing else, and it was not something that was just a quick tweak and the wind knocked out of you. So that would be a big deal. Again here, Mike Asti, thanks again to Michael Santiago of Getty Images there and formerly of an outlet here, one of our competitors in the Pittsburgh market, for joining me there briefly. And he's a Steeler fan, been a Steeler fan for a while, and obviously has that mind that this Steeler team could go the distance this year. Very, very possible. This is a Steeler team. I know Tony Romo was talking about it. This is a Steeler team that does give you those thoughts of 2008, where the defense had tons of talent. The defense was really performing, and the overall numbers aren't to where they were that year because that was maybe an underrated defense to NFL history. That was a really great defense overall in this millennium for sure. But this is a solid defense too for the Steelers. They had their hiccups the last few weeks in terms of Matt and I talking about the defense had a lot of hype. They have tons of talent. There was gaffes in that Broncos game, almost letting the Broncos come back with a backup. They should have been better in that game. Even to Philadelphia, you let the Eagles come back there at the end. You let Wentz move up and down the field, finding receivers probably the casual fan hadn't ever heard of with all the injuries with Philadelphia. So it's not like the defense has been perfect. It's not been as good as 2008 by any means, but there's tons of talent there. They're getting the takeaways. The pass rush is the thing. When you have that kind of a pass rush, you're going to give quarterbacks fits, especially a younger quarterback, and Baker is still a younger quarterback. Ryan Tannehill had that playoff run last year. I'm not afraid of him. The Steelers defense is not going to be afraid of him. I don't think he can take over games if need be. I think a pass rush like that will give him fits, and that could be a problem next week for sure. No longer are you facing Dak Prescott. That would have been the matchup, obviously, against the Cowboys. Now it's Andy Dalton, obviously very familiar with him from his days with the Bengals. But, of course, while he's a veteran, they know how to get to him. That pass rush knows how to get to him, and he has not had success against the Steelers while with Cincinnati. Maybe more weapons down there. Maybe now he has Zeke Elliott. But still, it's a Dallas team that's kind of underachieved at this point, and now they lose Dak Prescott. So the schedule opens up despite getting tougher, and, of course, Lamar Jackson being so elusive. That'll be maybe where Josh Dobbs comes in during practice. We'll see what happens there. But the Steelers pass rush able to perform against him early in last season, not as much towards the end. But this is a better Steelers pass rush than it even was last season and has been good now for a while. This Steelers pass rush in terms of overall sacks, touching back to the 2002 Buccaneers, talking about at least 3 sacks in interception through consecutive games, first time since the New York Giants. That's been done, and that's years ago. So this Steelers team, especially defensively, is good enough to win a championship as long as they play to that potential and stay healthy enough. Of course, Bush going down doesn't help that cause. Offensively, too, it's certainly good enough. Ben didn't have to really dominate in this game in terms of numbers because of how this game just moved along with the Steelers really having this never in doubt. And obviously the Browns making mistakes and making it easier on the Steelers here, trying to pull up Ben's numbers here right in front of me. Yeah. Ben 14-22, an average of 60 or 63.6%. So 14 for 22, 162, 1 touchdown, was sacked twice, a quarterback rating of 100.9. Solid day. That's a Ben day from 10 plus years ago, though. That's not going to be a fantasy day for Ben, but he was doing enough. He didn't make the mistakes. This game was moving along where the Browns were going to lose. They were overmanned. They were making mistakes. Baker was making mistakes. It wasn't going to be their day. So as long as Ben didn't make mistakes, and as long as Ben didn't try to do too much, like maybe he would have done a couple of years ago, worrying about feeding it in there still for AB numbers, that his numbers are going to be like that. It's a game managing type of numbers. I'm not saying he's a game manager. He's a Hall of Famer. He can certainly be dynamic. We've seen that this year. But that's a game manager spread. And, 60+% passing, 14 for 22, less than 200 yards, mostly getting in the end zone thanks to the running game. Some game manager spread, but that's all he had to do in this game. The 1 TD under 200 yards, certainly good enough for this game. Claypool, again, as I talked about with Michael, Ty and Randy Moss, Martavis Bryant in there too. He said the Steelers hadn't done this. Well, they did with Martavis Bryant, now forgotten. So, again, it speaks to the Steelers drafting receivers, always being a dominant franchise in terms of drafting receivers. And that may harken into JuJu. That's something to discuss here, guys, with you in the chat. Any concern about JuJu establishing himself as a number one and even his future here? Because it appears, and I thought this too, that when Chase Claypool was drafted, there was that, okay, if JuJu leaves, Chase Claypool throws himself right in there, certainly could fit right in. That's been reported by many others that JuJu may want too much money. He had first few weeks. He was solid then, certainly been hustling, saying all the right things, but not able to dominate. Certainly hasn't putting number one receiver numbers in there yet because of the situation. And with Claypool's dominance, Claypool's been really the number one receiver with Deontay Johnson out. So this maybe hurts JuJu individually, but he's handling it well, and this team is certainly winning. Let me see here. Again, I know the Titans had to go overtime to beat the Texans, but the Titans have been playing so well. They were a playoff team a year ago. That would be a quality win if you beat Tennessee, especially handily. They had a bad day at the office today, even though the Steelers dominated Houston. I, again, wouldn't read too much into that, but I don't think the Titans are nearly as good as Pittsburgh. Go Steelers with the Browns and hopefully know how to be cocky. This was for the Browns, all right. Yeah, the Browns were cocky. The Browns were talking a lot about this one for Miles, which was absurd. He certainly wasn't the victim of that issue last year. And obviously it did end up being for Myles. Myles Garrett was not a factor at all. Impressed with our running game. Well, to this point this year, the running game has been good overall. Now, earlier in the season, I was still hard on Connor despite getting over 100 yards, a lot of empty calories in some of those games, and some of those total yardage production-wise. But you look at what's going on with even Anthony McFarland getting involved there. As long as Connor stays healthy, this running game should be fine. It's a big deal, though, because you still have concerns on whether or not he'll stay healthy. He certainly already got hurt once this season. Eric Ebron is maybe somebody to talk about here too, because he was really trying to get involved in this team last week. A bad day last Sunday, not good. He almost actually cost them that game. He's having a tough time really getting involved in this offense, but he's a major piece for Ben as a threat there as a tight end. Only 2 catches and 9 yards again today with a bad drop, and what could have also been another turnover. So he's still struggled to get involved here. I still expect him to get involved a lot more moving forward. He was brought to the Steelers for a reason, and I still expect him to have an impact with this team. But he is certainly showing signs of having a difficulty really being involved in this offense, which could be an issue here eventually, as long as he can keep his cool because of the rumors of him with the Colts and him being a little bit of malcontent there when he's not doing it individually. And he is not doing it individually to this point this season. James Washington getting involved there, 4 catches, 68 yards, and the touchdown. So it's nice to see him getting involved because he was so good last year. Not as big of a deal this year with Chase Claypool catching all of those headlines to this point this season, and even Deontay Johnson playing well prior to his injury. But James Washington able to get involved today. I think it's good that Ben got him involved today in a game that was never in doubt, of course. Eagles are taking the Ravens to the brink. Again, and we look at the rest of the NFL here today. I do think that you cannot, every week is different. You cannot read as much in like people like to do in college football of, well, we dominated this team and that team struggling with that team, so that means this. You can't always do that. The Steelers in recent years have certainly proven that true, laying eggs against teams that just shouldn't have been good, aren't as good, and it cost the Steelers later on that season. But yeah, the Ravens and Eagles are playing a tough one. The Steelers beat the Eagles. The Steelers also did not dominate the Eagles like they did the Browns today. They let the Eagles hang around, and that is a beat-up, undermanned Eagles team. Carson Wentz not nearly having what he had to deal with years ago when he was MVP candidate, and then Nick Foles led them to the championship. So I don't think that means the Ravens are not a team that could beat the Steelers. I don't think the Titans are legit. I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're scary. I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl. I think the Steelers should beat them. Certainly get to Ryan Tannehill. I'm not high on Tennessee, even though I think it counts as a quality win if you beat them. But the Ravens obviously are. I mean, they're going to be the team you're vying against for the AFC North crown, which I think the Steelers certainly can win. And even if they struggle against the Eagles, like the Steelers did at some points, I mean, they didn't dominate that game in terms of the final score. I don't think it means anything. The Ravens can certainly still beat the Steelers with that roster, with Lamar Jackson, with their defense, with Hollywood Brown. Definitely can happen here. Again, Mike Asti here on Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and of course, SteelersNow.com. After the Steelers' dominating performance against the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not trying to rub it in, but man, it really was. The Browns never in that game, really, from opening kickoff at all. Mistakes for Baker Mayfield, a rough day at the office for him. The Steelers pass rush really got to him. It almost was like this team didn't prepare. I don't know, or the Steelers overly prepared because they were chirping so much, and they were more of a contender in those games last year without Ben. It certainly appeared, but a similar defense. So it's weird that Baker couldn't do anything today, but was able to do some things last year. Regardless, though, the Steelers defense able to do even more today in terms of pass rush than last week. Connor, one of his better days this season for sure. He always does it against the Browns, so he always performs against the Browns for sure. Of course, Claypool, not nearly what he did last week, but another solid day. Same thing for James Washington. Again, JuJu not really involved, again, individually. It's not a season for JuJu. JuJu only 2 catches, 6 yards. He's going to say all the right things, but individually, this is certainly costing him money. They're not going to pay a number 1 wide receiver money. When they're drafting receivers like this, rookies are stepping in and doing this. You're not just going to do it to be nice because you like him in some commercials. There's no point in it, okay? Claypool, 4 for 74. James Washington, 6 for 68, and the touchdown. And Ben earlier, 14 for 22, 162. 63.6 completion percentage wise, 1 touchdown, no picks, of course, 100+ quarterback rating, and he was sacked twice. So a solid managing type of day for Ben, but he did not make mistakes and do too much, which is good because he didn't need to. And the Steelers game was never, the Steelers-Browns game was never in doubt. Again, head over to SteelersNow.com as I get close to wrapping things up here, unless I get more chat activity. Tons of post-game coverage over there, SteelersNow.com, that Alan's putting up for you from his coverage at Heinz Field on location. Still here. We go back, see if I missed anything. Again, as I said, the Bush injury is going to be a thing. I mean, that's going to be a problem. The Steelers do not want to be without Bush for that long. That could be an issue. Defensively, though, they have a lot of talent. They still have a lot of the pass rush, but Bush, such an important piece, so intelligent, such an important part of the future, that having him out for games certainly would not be a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That kind of seems obvious, but obviously true, and you keep bringing it up and going to keep saying the same thing. Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's obviously a problem for sure. Let's see what else we have going on here in the chat. No drama today. Dave, man, I am with you. I mean, that's almost going to cause a shorter post-game show, but it's fine. Get to go on with the rest of my Sunday. You guys the same. Last year, of course, after the Steelers-Browns, not a drama-free program, unfortunately. It was all about what the NFL is going to do, disciplinary measures, Myles Garrett going buck wild, Ben not there, the Steelers didn't play well. At that time, you already felt like the season was kind of over in terms of being a contender, and it was all about the conversation. And we'd later hear more from what Mason Rudolph may or may not have said. And I've touched on that in past shows. I'm not going to do that here. I also have that on my Twitter. I don't believe Mason said what he said. I think Myles Garrett was trying to get out of a jam there, to say the least, and it wasn't good for anybody. But now we're able to talk some football. AB gone, Bell over there with the Chiefs. I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys think the Chiefs are that much better from that move. That running game was a piece they were without last year, despite being so good offensively and having Patrick Mahomes. They have a rookie there this year who's playing well, but pairing him with a veteran like Le'Veon Bell, who can also be a receiver for you and really can open things up for Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes is excited. He's been tweeting about it, but that's going to make that Chiefs offense even that much more dynamic, and it may separate them from the Ravens and the Steelers and the Patriots and whoever else, the Bills, in the AFC. And maybe we've seen that today with the Ravens struggling with the team the Steelers already beat. The Steelers dominating this game, but it is against the Browns. The Patriots struggling with the Broncos early and all the question marks about, health of certain players. We'll see. That's something I can always put out there, always say on shows, because everything is still in front of us the rest of this season. And you got to make sure that you don't get too high or too low with one in particular game, because this is a Browns team that, despite the 4 in a row, maybe fool's gold, certainly not ready to make this truly a rivalry yet. But the Chiefs just adding and getting more and more talented is certainly a big deal. So for any of you in the chat, and I still see a lot of you watching along, I'm going to close this by asking you guys whether you feel Steelers-Browns is a current rivalry in the National Football League. Okay? If you want to talk about this, we can. If not, I will close things up and close up shop there and get things up here to complete our coverage for the day. I will say, for me, it's not a rivalry until the Browns not only can win a couple games in a row, and I know they won last year, obviously didn't win this one. Very, very rarely are they beating the Steelers just in general, certainly very, very rare overall against Ben Roethlisberger. Just doesn't happen against Ben. He basically owns the Browns as well as the Bengals, etc. But Steelers-Browns, is it a rivalry today as we stand? For me, the Browns not only need to win a couple, they need to be a contender in the league for several years in a row. They need to be a playoff team a few years in a row and actually be legit where the games matter. Because even when they beat the Steelers last year, even when they played competitive against Steelers in years past, even if Pittsburgh will get a win, and there's been much closer games than this one here today, which was never in doubt. How much of a big deal is it? Because you knew at the time, mostly, the Browns were not a threat. They were going to be a 4-12, 5-11, 6-10 team at best, and not a playoff team. The Steelers, the last 2 years, I get they weren't a playoff team, but they were closer still. A game away last year, they would have been in with the expanded field. They had all the injuries and drama. And normally, prior to that, they were a consistent playoff team, in fact, in every year with Mike Tomlin. So it's a lot of playoff years in a row. That's a championship 12 years ago. Certainly, could be more recent for Steelers fans with all the talent. But we're talking about 1964 for the last Browns title and no Super Bowl appearances and a bunch of heartache throughout the history of that franchise, including leaving town for years. So is it a rivalry today with how putrid that franchise has mostly been the last 20 years, really since returning to the National Football League? For me, they need to be a contender for years in a row for it to be a rival. I already talked about that word JuJu this season. He's not been the number one. It's going to cost him money if he's even back at all. He has not been the top dog that he thought he was going to be and that many fans want him to be. Claypool has made it easier to say goodbye to JuJu, to be real. Okay, and David, and obviously you're a little older than me, so maybe that's part of it as well. I certainly know the history, but you lived through it. Fair point, but proximity dictates for me, plus old memories a la Turkey Jones. So you're going back. So again, I get it. I get the history is there. The Browns are an historical franchise like the Steelers, even with less success during the Super Bowl era. But prior to the Super Bowl era, tons of success. Jim Brown, championships. That 1964 team, one of the better teams in league history, really. So I get it. And the Steelers were bad then. They weren't good until the 70s. So this was flipped. I mean, people that are older may think, okay, there was a time in the league's history the Browns were just beating up on the Steelers and the Steelers were embarrassing. That existed. But that's half a century ago at this point. I don't think anybody alive today who maybe wasn't alive then, or certainly very few millennials probably, I would say most younger fans probably don't think of the Browns as anything but an embarrassing franchise that's never a contender. Anyone under 40 probably is not worrying about the Browns, in all honesty. Maybe even early 30s to be nice, but I would certainly say anyone 40 and under is probably thinking the years where the Browns were legit or a distant memory or non-existent to them. That's how bad they've been for so long, and they left the league for those years as well there. So in the late 90s. So again, it's just, for me, you need to have the Browns be a contender for a couple years in a row to muster something up. There were those moments where the Bengals were a rival, and they didn't even have the history of Steelers Browns, but they were a playoff team. They weren't maybe scared anybody to win a championship, but they were a playoff team. They were a legit playoff team. So those games mattered for the division for a few years there, even going back to Carson Palmer. Not the case with the Browns, certainly. I mean, they were winless not long ago. This is a team that flirted with the playoffs a couple years ago, getting respectable with Baker Mayfield, certainly a competitive team, and this year still above 500 4-2. It's not like they're bad, but I think they were a little exposed today, as well as the Steelers showing just how good they are. And for me, it needs to be several years in a row of having the games matter, even if the Browns would win, for them to be a true contender, for it to truly be a rivalry now, today, in current NFL life for a lot of fans, certainly the younger ones. Ravens-Steelers, to me, is still the number one rivalry for the Steelers, certainly in the division. Those games have mattered for 20 years. The Ravens have won championships too. They've been a legit contender. There have been Hall of Famers there. They also have a coach who's been there a while. Those games matter all the time. If they beat you, it could cost you the division. If you beat them, it could help you win the division. That's really never the case with the Browns, despite obviously you want to get the wins. But the Ravens-Steelers games matter, and they have been mattering. That's the rival. Even if they have a down year, it's been so good for so long, and both teams have mostly been a contender for so long, to now generation of fans are well aware of what's going on between those two teams, casual or the avid fans out there, that obviously that's a rivalry, and it could withstand a couple years of the teams not being good, like the Steelers the last couple of years, losing Bannon and then not being a playoff team. Claypool made him, I don't know what else you're trying to say there, but it's about Claypool. Yeah, he's been really, really good. Touched on it earlier, obviously. David, I was being nice there. Yeah, I know you're more than a little older, but you dated yourself throwing up Turkey Jones. So I didn't want to do that to you. I don't know your exact age. I appreciate you being one of our best subscribers. I know you're certainly older. I certainly caught that heat for our trivia show there with some of your questions there way back. I like to think I know sports history, but you certainly can dig with the history. Maybe because of your age, but I didn't want to throw that out for you. But Steelers-Browns has history. The Browns have history that I know and I can respect historically. I don't think most fans care or respect history like maybe I do. But today, it's not a rivalry. I'm not trying to pick at the Browns. They just haven't been good. It's not even that they haven't been good. They've been a laughingstock for so long. If they can become a contender for a while, it's a rivalry, even if the Steelers are beating up on them. It's not Steelers-Ravens, though. It'll certainly be behind that. But until they're relevant and can make a playoff appearance, for crying out loud, I don't think we can talk. If the Browns make a playoff appearance, regardless of what the Steelers do, talk to me. Even if the Steelers beat them both games. Because then you're going into a year thinking, okay, they're really good. They're coming off something. The games might matter. Until the Steelers have an offseason where they're worrying about the Browns or feeling like those games matter at all, and the Browns can actually beat them going into the game or a legit contender, then no, I don't feel it to be a rivalry. Browns suck? No. Yeah, maybe that's going to be a great way to end it because, yeah, the Browns, I mean, maybe they're good this year, better than they've been. I like Baker overall, but certainly he needs to be way, way, way better than he was today, or he's going to be on the hook for that job at some point there. They're going to give him tons of leash, tons of rope, obviously, but not a good day. When he faces a pass rush like the Steelers, he can't do it. All the weapons, all the talent there, more off-the-field drama than on. I know the Steelers deal with tons of drama as well, but they have tons more talent, and they've just been proving to this point this season, despite that schedule being a little easy so far, they are a legit contender. So I think the Steelers, number one, showed they are for real. They are a legit contender. They showed that in this domination of the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns showed they're maybe not as good as some would think. They're not certainly a championship team. They're certainly not a division champion type of team either. Maybe not even a playoff team this year. The wheels could still easily fall off. Room for a lot of drama. That talent has not nearly played to the level it should, at least individually. Baker in particular, certainly OBJ in that group as well, and even them defensively, they couldn't get it done against the Steelers offense and all the talent the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So the Browns are okay. I don't want to say good yet, despite the record. The Steelers are really, really, really good, borderline on great. They're certainly an elite team and one of the contenders to win a championship, certainly to win the conference in this league, in this conference. They showed that today. We'll see what happens moving throughout the season as the schedule will get tougher. Maybe a quality win coming, but not really any teams I'm scared of still, especially with the Dak injury. A lot of those teams, I'd imagine the Steelers are going to be favored in most of those games, especially with this hot start this year. So thanks to Michael Santiago for sure for joining me, especially there on his travel. Big Steeler fan. I'm happy to get him on here, and he's excited for this game. He's excited for the Steelers this season. He's excited for Steelers Browns, even though he agrees they're not that much of a rival. He's not really that much worried about them. And he has big dreams. A lot of Steelers fans do. I think it's legit, though, this year based on the way this team has played. So for Michael Santiago, for all of us at SteelersNow.com and across the Now family of networks, once again, I want to make sure to remind you to hit up the subscribe button, bottom of the video. Subscribe to us. It's free to do so and helps us get content to you as easy as possible. Find me over there on Twitter at Mike Asti 11. You can also find us online with all this post-game coverage over there, SteelersNow.com, at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, and of course at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. So I'm Mike Asti, and I'm telling you right now, like it or not, this Steelers-Browns rivalry doesn't exist. It's not a rivalry until the Browns can show me something else. They didn't show today, and the Steelers dominating again. That's the word. Dominating performance, 38-7 over the Cleveland Browns. The game never in doubt at all. And this Steelers team, and I thought so coming into the year, I predicted them to win the AFC North. This Steelers team now has a chance to exceed that and then some. This Steelers team is for real. This Steelers team is legit. And this Pittsburgh Steelers team, despite maybe showing the Browns maybe weren't who others thought they were, maybe exposing the Browns a little bit, the Steelers team also showed they are for real. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, certainly for what they've shown so far through 5 games, they are 5-0 right now, that they are a legit Super Bowl contender.